Kristi Spencer is the founder of The Polite Company. She is an expert on etiquette and how it can positively impact your life. This episode, you will learn practical tips and strategies to navigate social situations with ease and confidence, as well as how to build and maintain meaningful relationships, both in your personal and professional life.
We've all had moments where we wish we would have been more polite. But, for me, I was just interested in it my entire life. Not so much about being polite, but just kind of interested in how we impact a situation with what we do and what we say. And, we can make those situations go better, or we can make them go worse. And so I've been really interested in studying, how we can make those things go better.
Right. And how do we make things go better in a social situation? Let's say I'm in a job interview. How can I be, a more polite person? What's the etiquette that I have to absorb or, present? I
think just about with any etiquette lesson that we teach, the first thing is that you're on time somewhere. And then, you always want to dress appropriately. So that's true in a job interview as well. And in a job interview, I think that, there's a combination of speaking, but there's also a big component of listening that somebody needs to do. So somebody that comes in and just wants to ramble off their qualifications, which, the interviewer presumably already has on a sheet of paper, is kind of missing out. And so, what we say is that your degree or your experience is what gets you in the door, but it's your personal skills that will get you the job or the promotion. So people look great on paper, but then when you meet them, they're not so great to be around. So I think that it's important that, we show our personalities, but we're showing the best parts of our personalities when we're going for those job interviews.
Yeah. And there's so many different types of personalities. And I feel like nowadays a lot of people will try to describe themselves as, oh, I'm an introvert, so I'm not really good at talking to people. I'm not really good in social situations. But I feel like maybe someone like you would have an opinion on that is like, there's a way to be an empowered introvert and there's also ways to be, a more tolerable extrovert, because extroverts get a bad rap for being, overly chatty, overly social. And, I wonder what someone like you who's an expert on these types of things has a view on that.
I think what's the best thing to do is let somebody figure it out on their own. So if I have to tell you that I'm an introvert or an extrovert, I think it's better just to let somebody figure that out and make their own opinion. I think that when we do that, it looks like we are trying to fit into a box or we are trying to portray ourselves in a way. But if you just do those things, people are going to figure it out on their own.
Yeah. And so you are kind of against the rules of, social norms and etiquette. But what are the kind of things that keep you in line, or what are the things that you can use to kind of, have a more kind of productive and confident, social interaction?
Well, there are so many rules when it comes to etiquette, and those are important. There's books and books and hundreds of thousands of rules, and those are great because those give us a place to start. But when we really want to think about our everyday life, there's not going to be a rule for everything that we do. And so we really have to then let some principles guide our actions. And, some manners, fall out of favor with time, or they might be specific to a country. And so there's not always a rule for everything, but there is always a principle. So for instance, in Japan, we would bow when we met. Here in the United States, we would shake hands. Okay, those are two different manners, two different ways of doing something. But the principle is that we want to show people respect when we meet them. And so really knowing and thinking about those principles is what I encourage people to do, rather than, look for the rule on a page to guide what they are going to do next.
Yeah. And what is a way we can show someone respect, not knowing their cultural background? What is the best way we can do that?
I think, we can observe, and then if we're unsure, we ask. So if we're not sure how we pronounce somebody's name, ask the person. For goodness sakes, don't give them a nickname that's easier for you to pronounce, or, obviously call them dude or buddy or something like that. Take care in respecting other people. But I think, we just ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I've never been upset with somebody because they asked me a question to make our interaction go better. So I think sometimes we're embarrassed and we think, I don't want to ask a question. That sounds so dumb. But that's exactly what we should do. There is the golden rule, which is to treat people how you want to be treated. But then there's the platinum rule, where we learn to teach other people or to treat other people how they want to be treated. And sometimes that means asking them what that is.
Yeah, so it's going from kind of respect to almost like consideration of that person.
Yes.
So what are some things we can look for in a person or look for in our social interactions to have more consideration for who a person is, and what might be the best way to show them respect?
I think, when we're using consideration, we are practicing empathy, which is so important, which doesn't mean that we necessarily agree with somebody else, but we can at least see their point of view. And we can understand from that point. We can, really ask questions to try to seek answers or seek information instead of trying to instantly solve a problem. Sometimes that problem is much better solved when we arrive together to the resolution than when one person tells the other person, here's how it goes. No questions asked. 1, 2, 3.
I see. Okay. So it's a kind of a slow dance, it's a bit of give and take and that kind of thing. So I wonder, for the person out there who is socially awkward or maybe, not really sure of how things should and could be, what's the first steps they can take in, say a networking event or somewhere where there's a lot of people that they might want to talk to or they, have a interest in speaking to?
I think the first thing you want to do is have a goal for the night before you leave from where you're, your hotel room or your car or the parking lot, whatever. So have a goal that you are going to meet X number of people, whether that's 2 people or 3 people. I don't encourage people to say, I'm going to meet everybody there. That's not, you look like a mad person trying to, jump from person to person. So, make that a really attainable goal. So I'm going to meet 3 people tonight and I'm going to have conversations with 3 people. So having that rule, and goal for yourself, I think is great. And that's going to motivate you throughout the night to start conversations well, end conversations well, and try to make some good impressions along with making those connections.
And how do we start a good conversation?
I think asking questions is always good. So people love to talk about themselves. So, how's your day going so far? Or how are you enjoying the conference? We can look for clues. Say that somebody is wearing a tie with whitewater fishing on it or something. Oh, you must be interested in that. Asking people about their shared experience. Maybe it's something that's on the menu or something that they're both eating or drinking at the time. Just really kind of showing an interest in the other person and keeping things low level conversations in the beginning, because we don't want to tell people our life story when we first meet them. That becomes a little heavy for that person. It becomes long, and we're then becoming more socially awkward at that stage instead of making tracks to do the opposite.
Yeah. And there's people out there as well, who might go, okay, cool. I get in. I go, oh, I like your t-shirt. I love that team, or I love that thing. But what are the next questions they can ask? How can they have a system almost to continue asking questions without sounding like, they're just trying to interrogate this person?
Right. So you really want to ask questions until you hit on something that both of you have in common. So,
Right.
You're doing that fishing expedition and then you find something that you both have in common. So that's what we kind of go from, just connecting with that person to really then having something in common with them. And then once you have that thing in common, the conversation should flow pretty easily from there, where you're asking questions, they're asking questions, and it's a real back and forth. But sometimes it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort for us to get to that place.
Right. And let's say the conversation's gone swimmingly well. We've made like a new friend now, but we kind of want to, either move on to the next person or politely excuse ourselves. How do we end a conversation politely?
Well, there's some clues that you can do with body language. So, you can kind of, angle your toes away from the person. You want to still be giving them respect. But, I think the best thing that we can do is say, I have enjoyed talking with you so much. I have some other people I need to talk to. Hopefully we'll meet again.
Right. Okay.
And just that, I don't think anybody would be offended. Where you get into trouble is where you tell little lies. I'm going to get another drink. Well, then they're just going to go up to the bar with you and get another drink. Just finding other things that you have to do. That's not the truth. You're going to get found out in that. And I think no one has a problem if somebody says, oh, you know what? This has been great. I've enjoyed it. I've got to talk to somebody else.
Right. So how do you exercise these principles in your daily life, Kristi? How do you go around the world being a polite person?
I think it's really just little things. And so it's going into the grocery store or the drive-through line or something with the expectation that things are going to go well, and looking for those times when things go well. So I know that it's not difficult if we want to set our sights and find all the grumpy people in a day, or all the, people who are using foul language, or, all the people who aren't doing their job well. But you can then train yourself to see all the things that are going well, and the people who are smiling, and the people who are opening the doors. And you can let that be your primary focus too. And that's probably been the biggest change for me internally, was that I didn't know it was possible to be able to change your perspective in that way. So when people say, oh, I'm so glad that you're teaching etiquette. People are so rude nowadays. I think, no, that's not why I did it. I did it for me, is because I wanted to do something positive for my own well-being. And it's been amazing.
Yeah. And what do we do if we come across somebody that's rude? Do we use the old phrase of kill them with kindness? Or is there a polite way to kind of tell someone, kick rocks, but in a nice way?
I think, you'd have to think, is it really necessary that you tell them anything? Or can you just ignore it and move on? Because by the time you've responded to it, you've let them impact your day and, diminish your, well-being, your, state of mind. So I think a lot of things we can just ignore, and we are not going to change those people by popping off to them. All we're going to do is hurt ourselves by doing that. So I think, it really is being the, bigger person in some things. And I mean, we say, two rudes doesn't make a right. So being rude to somebody else, you're still in the wrong. So it's going to, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Those are your two choices.
Yeah. And in this kind of thread of politeness, I'm picking up that there's an element of self-help. There's an element of self-improvement. But obviously all that stems into your mindset and, having control of your mindset, or being able to make your mindset adapt to certain situations so that you get the best possible outcome for yourself and others around you. So I'm wondering, how did you get to this state where you have now decided that, right, I'm going to keep my mindset in this way. I'm going to operate in this way. Anything that comes in to try to distract me, I'm going to just get back on track?
It's sometimes can be a challenge because life doesn't always, go right and exactly how we want it to go. But I made the choice to start a business and to concentrate on that business. And really, what I do comes from a spirit of wanting to help other people and teach other people. So that's easy to keep my mind on that. And I just see the benefits it has in my life, to where I am a more content person. I have more gratitude because I concentrate on thinking about, things that I'm grateful for, and I have more to give to other people. Not to say that, learning to be polite, changes everybody. It doesn't. But I think incorporating just a little bit of what I do can help people. They don't have to go on this, freakishly Pollyanna, expedition like I have. But I think just adding it to your life in little ways can really be beneficial for people.
So like you said, when you go into the grocery store or the drive-through, having that mindset of things are going to go my way, and not in a selfish kind of narcissistic way. They're going to go positively, polite. It's going to be pleasant. Those are the types of ways that people can, implement politeness from this very moment.
And that has a ripple effect. I mean, you hold the door for somebody, that happens to me. I think, when I'm looking for how I can pass that on today and something I can do. Maybe it's not holding the door. Maybe it's not giving a compliment, but there's something I'm going to be able to do that day to pass that along. And if we all kind of do that, I think, the world would be a more kinder and positive place for us to all be.
Lovely. We've been really focused on like the personal aspects of things. And I'm wondering, everybody who's listening hopefully has some kind of job or some kind of professional environment they operate in. How can we bring that politeness into the workplace to make the workplace a much more interesting place for us to be?
I think that's the biggest part of what I do is help businesses. And we're going to concentrate on workplace civility. We're going to think about the ways that we are treating each other that sometimes are not civil. And they go unnoticed. And a lot of times they don't reach an HR level. But, we want to think about when we're interrupting other people, when we're sending an email that has, no humanity connected to it, no name, no please, no thank you, those kinds of things. Emails that don't get answered. People who take credit for something somebody else did. These are all little things. And we've all had those happen to us at work. But what does that do day in and day out? Never mind the interactions that your employees are having with clients, that affect your reputation. But you have an internal reputation as well. And, with the job market like it is today, I think companies really have to focus on having a culture that, demands people act civilly towards one another and, just doesn't tolerate anything less, promotes, educates, and talks about it. Because if we don't have that in our businesses, we're not going to be able to retain employees. Every time you lose an employee, you're losing so much more than just a person. You're losing their knowledge. You're having to fill that position. There's more training. And people do leave jobs because they are treated poorly. People do leave jobs because they are treated uncivilly. And so, the statistic is about 12% of the people who leave a job because they were treated poorly. And I don't think we can afford that anymore with something that can be prevented. We expect people to go on to bigger jobs, better jobs, but for somebody to leave because they were treated poorly has to be unacceptable in our businesses.
Yeah. And, there's a big kind of culture around now that, this workplace was toxic. These people were this way. These people were that way. So I'm wondering if there's a way that you can politely stand up for yourself in a way that you still show that person that is making you feel that way, the same respect and consideration we were speaking about, a couple minutes ago.
Sometimes we have to have difficult conversations. And when we have those difficult conversations, when we come at that with, asking permission to have a conversation with somebody else, that really kind of, gets their guard down if you ask that permission. But then you just say, this is important to me. I care about our relationship. Is there something that we can do here? I think if you approach it, with consideration, respect, and honesty with that person, if they don't want to change, there's a bigger problem there. But I think making people aware of it, I think promoting workplace civility and training is really important. I don't know any workplace that is, 5 stars all the time and needs no more training. So I think that that's an important thing. But I think that we all have to participate in workplace civility, but we all have to promote it as well. This is something that's important to us. And just like our vacation time or our sick leave or insurance, workplace civility is a right of workers to work in a, at the very least, civil environment.
And part of civility is honesty as well. So, if you're a low-level employee or a high-level employee, you have to be honest with each other about, what's going on with you or, why you're not able to complete a certain task. So I'm wondering as well, how does that power dynamic work of honesty? Because sometimes it's not in our best interests to be honest in the workplace. Like say if we've messed something up or if you're not able to come into work type thing.
I think you're you really, even if you have messed something up, it really is in your best interest to be the first one to admit that and try to make it better. You know, as a hiring manager for decades, I would have not been happy to hear that from an employee, but I sure would have been less happy to hear it from another employee. So we're all going to mess up. And it's, any mistake that we make, the best thing that we can do is admit it, apologize, and move on as quickly as possible. So, that there is honesty to that, but there is that benevolent honesty as opposed to brutal honesty that we can choose to use on other people.
And you said you were a hiring manager for a while. What kind of industry were you working in? And, talk me through that kind of career path you had there.
I worked in television news for over 25 years. And so, I worked at local newsrooms, and I was a manager and a news director for 23 of those years. And that is a very pressurized, position, deadlines, bad news, things happening at all hours of the day, nothing happened on a schedule. And then it was just a continual push. There was always something next, always something. And, managing, newsrooms full of people. So for me, it got to be too much. And I was tired of the negativity that came with that position. Not to say that, hey, guess who was responsible for a negative atmosphere in the newsroom? That would have been my responsibility as well. But I decided that I wanted to make, strides to change that. And sometimes when we go for self-improvement, we're not exactly sure what we're going to get. Sometimes we don't get everybody around us. Not everybody makes it to the finish line with us. And then we can also decide, what? I found a new way to live my life. And now I can't live it any other way. And that's really what I found in that experience, was that there's this new thing that you can do, that I could do, and I had to at least give it a go.
Yeah. And talk me through the first days, months, years of you on, quote unquote, giving it a go. What did that look like when you said, right, enough of the newsroom, that's too much for me, the environment's just not serving me, I'm going to move into this whole politeness or etiquette space? What did that look like?
A little bit of panic, but then I just started, making contacts with local businesses, local schools. And it's kind of funny when you tell people that you do this, they go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was a thing, but now that it is. And then they'll call you up and say, you know what, I have an etiquette question. Or they think of, different ways it can be utilized. So I've had great success so far. I'm passionate about it, so I really don't give anybody an option when they're speaking to me. They're going to be pumped up about etiquette by the end of the conversation. But if you can find something that you're passionate about, all the better. And so the passion continues.
Yeah. And, people always say, oh, find your niche. This has to be the most niche thing I've come across that is so relevant to everybody, though, if that makes sense. As in, you're the first person I've met that's an etiquette coach, which isn't hold your knife and fork like this and be sure to wipe your mouth with a serviette when you're done. That's not day-to-day etiquette. That's very kind of situational, whereas you're giving people tools to be able to operate in the world in a much, I want to say, healthier way, because health does include your social as well as physical and mental well-being.
It is something that we can apply every day. So I could teach wedding etiquette, and that's going to apply to one person for their very important day, but it's really only one day. But there are people out there who teach those kinds of etiquette and have teas and, cotillions and on those kinds of things. And that is great. That has a place. Just for me, the way that I find that it applies more broadly is in workplaces specifically, but the day-to-day stuff, the job interviews that we're going to go on, or the, business social events, networking, those kinds of situations that we're going to be in over and over, where we really have an opportunity to improve. If you're improving at, getting married, that's probably not a good thing. If you're doing that more than a few times. But, if you are going to performances or you are going to other things, you have a chance to get better and to hone your skill and to be better at that. So that's kind of what I like, because I like, I don't get it right on the first try by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't imagine anybody else is either.
Yeah. And so what's an example of a time where, I don't know if this would be in the newsroom or in your current business, the Polite Company, where things didn't go so well and you overcame that? Because that is something that, there's always a lesson in our failures is what I like to believe anyways.
Yeah, trying to think of something specific for that. But, there have been times, the etiquette lady should not be late. Yeah. And so, when that happens, because life happens sometimes. And so we're late. And I think being able to, again, admit, apologize, and move on very quickly when you're late to something. And then I also think you can say, instead of, fumbling over an apology and explaining the million reasons why that happened, you can also just say, thank you so much for waiting for me. And that done sincerely, I think, kind of clears the air and gets things going. But, we're late. We forget to return calls. We do these things all the time. But again, just remembering that admit, apologize, and move on can really help. That helps me overcome issues. And hopefully it helps other people too. Right.
And so when you overcome these, let's say you're late somewhere and you kind of have to get into your session. What do you do mentally to kind of get yourself refocused? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm sorry I'm late, thank you for waiting for me, etc., etc. But still in your head, are you like freaking out? Like, oh gosh, I've been late, I'm going to be off. Oh, they're going to think something bad of me.
Yes, I keep freaking out, for minutes after that happens. Human. But, it does, if you can take a moment and center yourself and, go to the bathroom, and even if it's 30 seconds, just to kind of take a few deep breaths and, you can use humor to try to make yourself and other people feel more comfortable. But again, just leveling the playing field with that, apology and moving on. It's not easy, but the rest of your day depends on being able to push the reset button. And of course, it's very difficult, and then you try to explain, remind yourself next time, like, this is why I'm leaving 15 minutes early, because I'm going to get to that parking lot and I'm going to have 3 minutes before I have to walk in front of a group of people. And just, thinking about how good that feels when that happens and trying to kind of mimic that feeling is kind of helpful too.
Yeah. So you're saying, it's not, it's almost fake it till you make it type thing, but it's also be sure to learn from that experience and keep moving forward. And for some people, I know, things like public speaking seem like an absolutely alien thing that they don't want to do. But, in life, if you want to get ahead, there's elements of public speaking that you have to do. So I'm wondering, are you able to give us any tips about how to speak with confidence or just be more confident and, not completely crumble into a ball and a mess?
There's so much about how we communicate that has nothing to do with our words. So I think it's over 50% of communication all has to do with your delivery and your body language. And so, I know it sounds corny, but, standing up straight has so many benefits. I mean, you can breathe better, your shoulders are back, you look more confident. You can always, use other body language signals where you're not, your hands aren't in your pockets. You don't have something that's, a barrier to you and the audience. And I think people speaking slowly is also a big thing, which is so hard for me to do because when I get passionate about something, I speed up to about, twice the speed I should be speaking. But I think, keeping that body language and shoulders squared and our hands are open and our toes are pointed at the audience, all of those little things that you have to practice along with knowing what you're going to talk about. It takes so much. And I think people disregard the practice that it takes to put it in, myself included. I, always, be practicing that speech because it is difficult to get up in front of people and talk to them. And some people say it's easy and they love it. And I wish I shared that with them, but it is nerve-wracking. So you really, I think practice makes perfect.
Right. Practice does make perfect indeed. So you said, if you're passionate about something, then you end up kind of stumbling over your words and speaking a bit too fast. So I'm wondering, what are you passionate about?
I am passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about learning what we normally do as humans and how we can keep ourselves always from doing that. I'm passionate in measuring ourselves the same way we measure other people, and giving ourselves as many breaks as we might give to other people. And when I go into a situation or have a phone call, my goal is I want that to be the best conversation and the best that person was treated all day. And that's kind of how I go into other situations as well, is I want to make an impression, but I want to make that person's day. And it kind of gets to be a game, in your mind to play. But again, that's putting the focus on keeping things as positive as possible in our lives, because things haven't been easy. They have not been at times polite. And now we need to get back to that.
And what can we do to be more patient with ourselves?
I think, we need to learn to be alone sometimes and to really be able to assess our actions and how we're coming across to people. So, I will have people write down, what are some attributes that they want to use to describe themselves? And then what are they doing to portray that? Either are you portraying that through your social media? Are you portraying that through the way that you dress? Are you portraying that in the words that you use? But I think we have to understand that in this world, we are meeting people for the first time online. We are judged within, 3 seconds of meeting somebody, and we can't help that from happening. Those things are that is how our society is. That's how we're wired. And so I think we got to understand that. And instead of saying, well, people shouldn't judge other people. Well, we're all reading the billboards. We can't help but read the billboards. And so when it's in front of us, we're going to read it. So I think that we just have to really be honest with ourselves in what we're saying and doing and portraying, and if that's the message we really want to send.
Right. And so you said, through like journaling and writing down, you can kind of craft that image for who you are and what you want to be and that type of thing. So I'm wondering what is your kind of, obviously don't share too much of yourself, but who have you kind of, molded yourself into in this process you've gone through of journaling and, sculpting a true self?
I really wanted to work on having gratitude, because I think so many things come from that. And instead of thinking of, I don't have this, or this is, different than everybody else, or I can't, or I won't, or those kinds of things, is to be grateful and just come from that place every day. And when you are thankful for experiences, when you can even be thankful for when things go wrong, because you know that it eventually got you to where you are. Be thankful for the good relationships, the bad relationships. All of that has a huge impact on me to be able to have this outlook daily, is just that I'm sincerely grateful for everything that I have. And it's not because it's the best or because it's perfect, but it's because it's what is meant to be for me. And it's probably turned out a lot better than I deserve.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. As in, if you're, a person that's full of gratitude, then realistically, most things are a learning experience, if not a positive experience. So kind of leading on from that, what is it about what you do that brings you the most joy?
Answering people's questions and maybe even affirming something that they thought was right, but they weren't quite sure. I teach a lot of college students, and afterwards, I'll tell them, listen, when you get that job interview, you better be sending me your questions. I want to be the first one that knows. And, same thing if it's a question about weddings, or it's a question about dating, or any of those things. I love being in on those moments for people and to be that person that they feel like, hey, I might not have all the answers, but I'm going to give you my attention and try to help you out. But I just love being a part of people's lives in that way.
And what are some frequently asked questions for you?
Well, one thing people will say is etiquette, are we still doing that? And, I tell them, yes, we're doing it right now. You and I are speaking. There's etiquette in that, again, on the highway or at school or on social media, there's etiquette wherever we go. We just have to recognize what it is. But most often people say, which fork do you use? And, those kinds of questions, which they really know the answer to, but that's just kind of what they think of when they think of etiquette. And the next thing I get is people just kind of just freeze and they don't want to make any move whatsoever because they think they're going to do something wrong. So I try to tell them, listen, there's only one person who's nervous about their actions, and that's me. So I'm worried about my own actions. I'm not worried about judging you. So those are just some of the funnier things that I get from people.
Lovely. Gosh. I'm trying to think of any time where I've been, unconscious about the etiquette and messed up, but it really does depend, because we always go to the kind of high profile kind of side of things as opposed to the day to day, which is, almost like I guess like a subconscious reaction. And I think what you're trying to do is get people to have a more conscious interaction with people as opposed to just kind of exist how they feel like existing.
Yes, I think it comes to when you're going to have a conversation with somebody at the grocery store or, the checker at a grocery store. Are you on the phone with somebody else? Do you have your earbuds in, or do you take time to direct your, thoughts and your conversation toward that person? We can't go through life just pretending that these people are, pieces of a movie or something that aren't real people. Like everyone's a real person. I was teaching dining etiquette to a class, and one of the waiters was in the room, and I said, what's the most rude thing that people do here? And I thought it was going to be, bad tipping or, leaving a messy table. And, his response was, when I ask people what they want to drink, or I ask people how their day is going, and they say, I'll have a Coke. And it's like, I'm a person. I'm not somebody who's here to serve you. I asked you a question. No matter who it is, they deserve an answer. But I think that we just kind of are on autopilot. And sometimes we're forgetting that everyone we interact with is a person and they want to be treated like a person. And I think if we did that a little bit better, we would be better off.
Yeah. So you have to kind of acknowledge people for who they are and what they're doing, as opposed to kind of live life almost transactionally.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of things that we do can seem like that transactional response. And sometimes etiquette can seem that way too. So when I say thank you, you say you're welcome. Why is that important? Do we really mean the words behind that? But what happens if we don't say either of those things? How do both of us feel after that? So it's just, I think it's a fascinating thing to study, and it's an interesting way to try to live life.
Yeah, it's definitely a way where now I think to myself, gosh, okay, how can I be more polite in my day-to-day interactions? And, funny enough, I was in a fast food shop the other day, and the guy was like, I was kind of like, I'll take my food. Yeah, thank you very much. And then he was like saying something else. I was like, wait, what did you say? He's like, make sure you tell me if you enjoyed it, because we only opened last week. And I was like, you've completely broken my frame of programming. It's normally, what do you want? Yes, I want this. Thank you very much. See you later. But he was like, no, I need to know this because, I'm trying to run a good business here. He really did flip my frame, because I was like, okay, well, in my head now, I'm like, I guess I have to come back and tell you. I was like, what if it's bad? So then, I was more consciously, almost more mindfully eating this fast food. I was like, oh no, these wings are crispy. These fries are really nice. I thought, I guess I'll go back on Friday and order the same thing again and be like, hey, it was actually quite good. Maybe this and that could use some work, but those small moments, that you sometimes might glimpse over, probably make, that person's day because they've just started their business. They want to make it as good as possible. And, there's a lot of people out there that start businesses and don't actually care about the business. So yeah, and now I have that kind of lens to look at things through. I'm definitely going to try my best to engage with people where possible, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, giving a compliment, of course, you can get into, some creep territory there too, but, giving a genuine compliment, holding the door open for people. But another question that I get is people say, well, should men hold the doors open for women? And I said, well, yeah, and women should hold the doors for men, and old people should hold it for young people, and young people should hold it for old people. It has nothing to do with, age or gender. This is just how we do things now. And I think, but that compliment, that holding the door, those little things that even if you do them, if you did them a little bit more intentionally, so not only do you hold the door, you tell the person, have a great day, or you just look them in the eyes and you smile as you do it. Just doing it with a little bit more intention, I think it helps that person some, but it helps you so much more.
Where can the people find you online?
My website is thepolitecompany.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and it's The Polite Company Kristi there.
Thank you for listening to People Explained. New episodes come out every Monday. We would appreciate it if you gave us a review on Apple Podcasts and shared this episode with a friend.